Now this covered the story of a Trump voter who lost her job. She was employed by the carrier company. And, you know, I'm sure most of you remember this, but Trump did this grandstanding charade where he pretended like he saved the jobs from Carrier. But in reality, what he did is gave them a giant corporate welfare check. So hosed the taxpayers, gave them a tremendous amount of money. And then months later, they outsourced all the jobs anyway. So just a horrible, horrible deal that Trump did. This was just, you know, a political game that he played. And the workers at Carrier now understand that because they got fired. They lost their jobs. So here's one of the employees talking about that.
That's right, I did. I voted for Trump. I drove in the pouring rain to vote for Trump. I believed him when he came to Indianapolis and said, we're not going to let Carrier leave. I was not alone. Hundreds of workers desperately wanted to believe him. I now feel betrayed, I feel angry, and I feel forgotten. I'm losing my job as the company I work for, the company I had hoped to serve until retirement, sells me out. I literally will be on the verge of homelessness, and I'm certainly not alone in this. Last year was a rough one for me. I suffered through some very difficult health issues, which I overcame, due in part because of the safety net of my union contract, the sick pay, and the health benefits that allowed me to be able to return to work. I came back to find out that my job was unfortunately being sent to Mexico. There have been a few good things that have happened this year. I survived congestive heart failure. My daughter survived the hurricane that ripped through Tampa, Florida. My son served over in Afghanistan and came back in one piece and safe with the United States Army. He and his wife gave birth to my first and only granddaughter on Good Friday, and he had to leave shortly after that for deployment, so he only saw her for 2 weeks. It's been very hard for me to revel and enjoy the good things when I'm so worried about how I'm going to keep a roof over my head, how I'm going to pay my bills, how I'm going to provide basic necessities and survive, the next week alone. My message to President Trump is this: you robbed me of all of that, even after I helped you win the White House. It doesn't have to be this way. You promised not to let Carrier leave. You can still live up to your promises. You can still sign an executive order to prevent federal contractors like UTC from offshoring jobs like mine.
That's right.
It's really that simple. If they want our American tax dollars, they can't ship jobs overseas. On January 30th, when you deliver your first State of the Union address, I hope you will talk about the America I live in. I hope you will talk about the true state of the Union for the working people. I hope you will tell us what you are going to do for us. There are hundreds of workers here in Indy and across the country who are counting on you to stand up for us. My children and my grandchildren and your grandchildren are depending on you. America's watching. Do the right thing.
Donald Trump is a fraud. That's what he is. She's correct when she says Trump could put an end to this right now. Sign an executive order that says if you are a company that outsources American jobs, you get no tax money. So a lot of these companies, including Carrier, I just explained to you how they got a giant corporate welfare check, a giant subsidy. And the idea was, we'll give you this money and you keep the jobs in the U.S. for a certain amount of time. And then they just shipped them out anyway. But Trump can sign an executive order. Any company in the U.S. that gets any tax money, you are not allowed to outsource your jobs. Simple executive order, isn't it? He's not going to do it. By the same token, he did this Made in America week. Remember when that was a thing? And the big announcement was, we are going to launch an exploratory panel to figure out what the best move is in regards to building in America. Why are you going through all that? All you need to do is sign a single executive order that says the U.S. government has to buy things made in America. And that is literal. It means only things made in America. Because right now, we have, a rule on the books that the federal government has to buy goods that are made in America, but there's a clause there that says made in America, and it includes all of our allies. So that means if something's made in Israel, if something's made in India, if something's made in even China, that counts as made in America. Even though it's literally not made in America, that counts as made in America. So all you have to do is just sign a single executive order. Made in America actually means made in America. And then do you have any idea how much that would help workers in the U.S.? Companies would be forced, hey, you have to hire here. Sorry. And then they do it because if there's a demand for it, they're going to fill that demand. So you have to hire here. You have to create jobs here. Again, the executive order she brought up, brilliant idea. Okay, so if you take any U.S. tax money for any reason, and you're a company, you are not allowed to outsource your jobs. If you do, sorry, all your tax money, your entire corporate welfare check, gone. Doesn't exist anymore. You can even go a step further. You can do tariffs on U.S. corporations that outsource jobs. So, okay, you want to send your jobs overseas? Well, then when you bring those goods back in the country, there's a tariff on them. So now those goods are more expensive than the goods that are actually made in America. So you're now incentivized to make your goods in America because when you make them in America, it's going to be cheaper than if you make them overseas. This is all you have to do. But he's not going to do it. Why? Because he's a fucking liar. He also takes corporate money. He also represents big money interests. The guy outsources his own jobs. He does business with 12 different fucking countries. I'm supposed to believe that the guy who wouldn't keep his own jobs in the U.S. cares so deeply about this issue that he would force every corporation in the U.S. to keep their jobs here? Please, 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 don't be ridiculous. So, and actually, one more fact on this part of the conversation here. Under Donald Trump's first year as president, there were 93,000 jobs that were outsourced. Under Obama, he was shitty on this issue too, but it was 87,000 jobs outsourced. So the guy who ran a campaign on not outsourcing jobs outsourced even more than Obama. So he's a fraud. He's a liar. He's a liar. But look at this poor woman's story. So they outsource her job and the carrier jobs in general. They hose her in medical bills with her congestive heart failure. They tax you and take that money to give it in a corporate welfare check to your former employer who just outsourced your job. Man, is that infuriating. And they send your kid to war. A war that they don't need to send him to. This is how this country's treating her. This is how this country's treating Americans. We're going to tax you, take your money, and give it to outsourcers. We're going to hose you in medical bills. We're going to outsource your job, and we're going to send your kid to war. A war that they might die in. Thankfully, hers didn't. But a war that you might die in, and you can't, why are we there? Why are we there? We're going to win. What is the definition of victory? In Afghanistan or Iraq, what's the definition of victory? Well, we got to defeat Al-Qaeda. Mission accomplished, come home. Well, we got to get Osama. He's dead, come home. Well, we got to get Saddam. He's dead, come home. Fuck are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? Americans are going to die, and also civilians in those countries are going to die? For what? For what? For U.S. imperialism. Man, those minerals in Afghanistan sure do look great. We can make a lot of money off of those. Let's stay there. Man, the oil in Iraq, that's wonderful. Maybe we should keep control of this region. Let's stay there. And the list goes on and on. It's all about natural resources. It's all about power. It's all about control. It's all about imperialism. This is how this country's treating people. This is the decline of an empire. We have to jam on the brake and then go in reverse at 100 miles an hour, because if we don't, holy shit, it's really bad now, but it's going to get even worse.